let's talk about that, okay? I want to bring in two men who understand the politics, who understand the players. We got D.C. resident and Democratic strategist, Antjuan Seawright, and former acting Deputy Homeland Security Secretary under President Trump, Ken Cuccinelli. Thank you both so much for coming on. Ken, I'll start with you. So there were reports that the Secret Service were kind of shocked by this idea of him going on the ride-along. Why couldn't he go on the ride-along? Because you know, optics-wise, him being on the streets, you know, making arrests, I mean, that would have been ideal for him. Why can't you do it?
Yeah, he would have loved that. Well, look, the Secret Service, their job's to keep him safe. And when you throw in a lot of random elements, when people know he's going to be on the street, he does make their job very difficult. They can't, you know, unless you're going to pre-plan an entire ride-along route, and I've done ride-alongs, then it's awfully hard for the Secret Service to do their job. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if their complaints were heard, because they can articulate that pretty clearly. I mean, I just said to you, you can picture in the city that may not be the smartest thing in the world to do from a safety standpoint. Sure, I'm sure Donald Trump would have loved to have done it. He loves law enforcement, and he loves to support them and be out there with them. And I know, just speaking for myself, when I've done ride-alongs, I've learned a lot. So,
yeah, Antjuan, you say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you think this shows that he's unserious about crime. But I would push back and tell me if that's what you think, because, look, he's out there, he's with the National Guard, he's with police, he's complimenting them, he's saluting them. They have been really touting some of the numbers that they've seen, what, over 600 arrests? Sure, a lot of those were illegal immigrants, but they're talking about making the city safer. Why do you think today may have been a bust for the president?
Well, the president is certainly not fooling a damn soul, certainly not fooling me. Donald Trump is not serious about crime, nor is he serious about any of the things he promised to the American people on the campaign trail. If the president was serious about crime, one, he would have invited the mayor to the table, had a broader discussion about crime, asked her and her department what resources are needed to deal with crime. Two, he would have accepted the fact, because in a bipartisan way, under the Biden-Harris administration, legislation was passed, the Safer in Communities Act, and so violent crimes are down across the country. He would have worked in a bipartisan way to expand that by inviting other mayors to the table. But instead, he wanted to have a public relations political stunt. Why? Because Donald Trump is in trouble, and he tends to lean on certain things for political rehabilitation purposes. One is crime and law enforcement. Two is race. Third is immigration. And we see these things continue to play out because he needs to rehab himself among his base. What better way to do that with a public relations stunt and trying to insist that somehow or another crime is an issue?
Well, Ken, I know you're going to respond to this, but let me just throw this back to you. Your response to Antjuan. So,
where to begin?
So the Washington Post poll of D.C. residents found that 80% are actually opposed to President Trump federalizing D.C., the police department. 65% say they won't make the city safer. I mentioned the numbers of arrests, but nearly half of those arrests are illegal immigrants. What's your response to this about whether or not this was a show, or whether or not this is a continuation of him trying to be consistent of a battle on crime, Ken?
So first of all, Washington, D.C. is an over 90% Democrat city. So for Donald Trump to have 80% opposition means that he has more than twice as many Republicans, meaning Democrats, are supporting this effort. Maybe most oppose it because, just like we heard from Antjuan, they just knee-jerkingly oppose anything Donald Trump does.
Well,
I'll tell you who doesn't oppose it.
Antjuan, hold on one second. Just let Ken finish, and then we'll jump in.
They have been supportive of this effort from the beginning, and they've been demonstrating the numbers of the improvement that's happened very quickly in public safety in Washington, D.C. So Donald Trump's having a success here, another success in really a term where he's off to a running start, and he needs to be. He only has one term. So this is a success that they're tying it into immigration enforcement, relates it to another one of his campaign promises, and it also unveils just how little Washington, D.C. has been doing to remove criminal illegal aliens from the public safety problem in Washington, D.C.
So before we get into what was a really big success for the president today, Antjuan, your response to Ken.
Ken, I see that you do not have an interest in having a relationship with the truth either. The fact of the matter is, because Donald Trump will not admit that crime is down by
People who
20.
can't make a substantive argument call names,
Ken, hold on one second.
You
Ken,
fall
hold on one
right
second.
into it, buddy.
Because of that fact, he wants to now investigate the statistics when we all know statistics are true. Secondly, what Trump has continuously done is Trump wants to put color on crime. He tends to pick on or pick at one, African-American mayors, but two, cities that have predominantly African-American populations because it's convenient. At the end of the day, if Trump was serious about bringing down crime, then why wait till 7 months into your administration to deal with it in a real way? And why not, if not anything else, advocate for D.C. statehood so D.C. can have reflective representation like every other state in the country? And I'll also say, Ken, with all due respect, this whole thing about picking on African-American mayors and black cities is not new. And as a Republican said on national interview today, Tom Tillis, South Carolina, where does it stop?
So that's a good question, right? Ken, if he wants to expand this to other states, and we know D.C. is very different, the authority that he has to actually federalize the D.C. police force, how does exactly he do it? I mean, what is the legal arguments he can make? Because under the current law, he is very limited in using federal troops to actually do police functions. If he wants to expand this to other states, other blue states, hey, maybe even red states, because we know there's crime there too, how does he do it?
Right. So it's a lot more difficult once you get outside of D.C. That's a fact. You're correct about that. And that's a reason to start with D.C. is to showcase it, which he's talked about internationally. Look, this is our nation's capital. It's a federal district. It should be a showcase, not a basket case. And right, it's been a basket case on the crime front. And he's actually making a dent in this, President Trump is, by being aggressive, by bringing federal resources to bear that the law allows him to bring to bear in Washington, D.C., where that is tougher in other places. And that's just a fact. Antjuan likes to use the word fact to say crime is down. The people in D.C. don't think crime is down. The people across the country don't think crime is down in these cities.
Antjuan,
they're
real
afraid
quick,
to go out. So, which is why there's so much Democrat support for this. Not among the political consultants like Antjuan, but ordinary people support reducing crime.
So, Ken, hold on one second. Antjuan, real quick response to that, because I do want to get into the big fine that he won over today. So, Antjuan, over to you real quick to respond.
Not want to accept the numbers like the chattering Washington, D.C. Republican class like Ken is a typical talking point when they come on programs like this. But what you can't argue is with the fact. And the fact of the matter is, let me also just make note, there's crime in every single city across the country. Where there are humans, there are crimes. Red states, blue states,
That's true.
Blue cities. So let's not get into this idea that somehow or another Washington, D.C. has crime that other places do not.
All right, I'll tell you what.
Put color on crime.
I hear you, Antjuan. Let's get out of those stats and let's talk about numbers here.
Can I go back to one thing, though? He called the president a racist. And he said because he's cracking down on crime in cities, he's a racist. This is the only president to pass criminal justice reform in 2 generations, and he was proud of it. And he pushed to make it happen on his side of the aisle, by the way. So, let's not forget the whole history for this president. He has accomplished more in the criminal justice area, including reform, not just cracking down on crime. So he's covered the whole spectrum. And your allegation that he's a racist because he's going after crime in cities is utterly pathetic.
Antjuan, real quick.
Well, I didn't say he's a racist. I said I think it's ironic that he tends to pick on African-American mayors or cities that have predominantly African-American populations. But if the shoe fits, by any means, tie it up.
All right. Well, listen. I want to put that to the side for one second because I have limited time and I have to ask you about this win that he had today, right? So this appeals court in New York threw out the almost $500 million judgment that he was ordered to pay in that civil fraud case, okay? You had judges today who were actually split. One judge said the case shouldn't even been brought. Actually said the AG, Letitia James, shouldn't have actually brought the case. Now it becomes a question, is she going to appeal it? Is he going to appeal it? Because basically they still said he's liable. He committed fraud. So, I mean, he said this is a total victory. Ken, is it a total victory?
Well, given the ridiculous basis of the case, yes. I mean, the idea that you have, where you don't even have victims. Letitia James, who campaigned on prosecuting Trump, Alvin Bragg campaigned on prosecuting Trump, and they made up offenses that have never been charged, at least not in the way.
The court did say he was liable. The court said that he was. The court said he was playing. The court said he was playing the system, Ken. The court said he was playing the system in order to submit false statements to get favorable loan and insurance terms. They still held that part up.
Well, look, they're limited in what they can do with a lower court. But the fact that you had a judge on a New York panel say this case should have never even been brought tells you an awful lot. This is not just a random selection. All the judges in New York are Democrats, all of them, virtually, because that's the pool that's drawn from. I just say that because it's been that way for a long time. And to wipe out a $500 million ruling in really a civil case that was brought to fulfill a campaign promise, and how outrageous is it to promise to prosecute particular people
so
when
you're talking
a lawyer,
about Letitia James
is a just outcome.
You're talking about that. The court actually took issue with some of the comments that she had. Antjuan, I mean, the president says this is a big win for New York businesses. You say that today's ruling was a loss to New Yorkers. How? I mean, isn't this justice? The appellate court looked at it and they said, nah, this was too excessive of a fine.
Well, it was a split decision, and we all know a split decision.
But they were unanimous that it was too excessive of a fine.
Sure, but also the rule of law prevailed before this. And so we're not at the end. I'm sure there will be appeals and there will be layers to this process. But if the president wants to take the victory lap, fine, but it cannot deal away with the fact. I know Ken wanted to filibuster through the fact, but the fact of the matter is before this, there was a verdict and a ruling that indicated that he did wrong. And so we can't argue with that. And sometimes the law works on the side of justice, and sometimes it doesn't. I've seen the law work for some that look like me and otherwise work against me. So I know a little bit about how the rule of law will and will not prevail in cases.
All right. Ken Cuccinelli, Antjuan Seawright, thank you both so much for coming on. Spirited debate, I'll say that much.
Good to be with you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.